Addie, and I'm here with Rudy again because I wanted to talk about liens on a property when you're selling the property. And we have some kind of crazy stories, and we could probably go all day on them, but wanted to talk about each lien and what that means on escrow. So Rudy's the best, so that's why we're talking to him again. So go for it.
Thank you so much. So typically the most common lien that you'll see right away is when a seller, for example, is selling a property, is that they have a mortgage. Typically, I would say 9 times out of 10, they probably just have one mortgage, but oftentimes you will have it where they'll have a line of credit, for example, too.
Sure.
So technically they have two. Couple things to just be cognizant about those. So as a seller, for example, or an agent, when you're advising your client, I would ask, obviously, your client right away, if you're the agent, to say, hey, how many mortgages do you have on the property? Can you also send me the mortgage statements? So that way, even when you open escrow right away, the agent can give that to their escrow company. So that way, when they actually get the title report, which actually lists all of the liens, they can compare and contrast to say, hey, I see one lien on title, but this client gave me two mortgage statements. Because I've had that happen before, where unfortunately, the lender who issued that mortgage originally didn't properly file the paperwork
Oh, God.
to be reflected on the county, which also would reflect on the title report.
All right.
So while there would be two liens, technically one of them is not technically of record. But the client is paying for it. So again, that way you can compare and contrast, because title companies, escrow companies, we're not all created equal. Sometimes we can miss this as well. So if you have that information,
Oh, that's good to know, because I never send it over.
give that to us. I had a transaction last week where a client swore up and down that they had two mortgages, but the title report only showed one mortgage. So I said, hey, if you can find me that other second mortgage statement, send it over. They did. Sure enough, title was able to track down
Oh, wow, okay.
and update their PR right away. So it wasn't an issue at closing. We got it done right away. But you want to avoid things like that. And typically as a seller, if you have that information, give it to your agent. And then things to expect is once you go into escrow, the escrow company is probably going to have you sign what's called a borrower authorization form. And people always say, why does it say borrower? I'm a seller. We usually call it borrower authorization at Foundation Escrow is because technically you are a borrower of that respective loan.
Right.
So when I send that authorization form, I'm acting as a fiduciary on your behalf to say, hey, I'm working with this client. They are a borrower for you. I have their authorization. Please give me what's called a payoff demand. Payoff demand is typically around 3 to 5 pages. It lists your principal balance. It has your interest that you have to pay at closing for your mortgage servicer, as well as any other miscellaneous fees like recording fees, stuff like that. So just make sure you have that readily available. I would also communicate with your agent as well as your escrow agent once you're in escrow to say, hey, I could possibly, as the client, order the payoff demand as well. Because again, with certain mortgage companies, they're all not created equal.
Yeah.
So like, for example, you'll have Chase Mortgage, where as escrow, we can order that demand through their fax by calling in their automated line and ordering it and having it within an hour. Rather, you have a company like Freedom Mortgage, who the client has as their mortgage company. If we as escrow order it, it'll take 5 to 7 days. But a couple loopholes with that. If you have the client order
That's happening.
they can get it within 2 hours.
Right.
So again, there's always workarounds. I would always say just be communicative. I always tell my sellers, hey, if I know right away who their mortgage company is, I can already tell them the timeline. So that way we can plan ahead. We can make sure that we're on top of things, because I don't want to close a 7-day escrow and then still waiting for a payoff.
Sure.
Rather, I can tag it on day one. So those are a couple things to look out for. For the lines of credit, in the instance when you have one, a couple things to just be cognizant of is typically, since that's considered like a credit card where you're kind of pulling money incrementally because it's a line of credit, you will want to make sure you have a payoff demand, ideally dated 2 days prior to closing. So you have certain title companies in San Diego County, I know of 2 specifically, where even if you have a HELOC payoff demand that's good through 30 days, they look at the date of when it was issued. And say, for example, we're closing November 1st. They want to make sure they have a payoff demand dated no later than October 30th.
Okay.
Because you will have it where your clients, as an agent or the seller, they will pull money. I had a file last year where a client pulled out $1,000 thinking we weren't going to find out. So the title company paid off the mortgage based on the demand that they had.
Sure.
2 weeks later, post-closing, title calls me and says, hey, Rudy, we were informed by the mortgage servicer for the line of credit that we're short now. So I call the seller and say, hey, what's going on? He knew what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
But he gracefully obviously paid for it right away. But we said, hey, you don't want to do that in the future, because that's technically committing fraud.
Yeah.
So
Technically.
So stuff like that, you just want to
Good
be
try.
cognizant of. And then as well with lines of credit, us as escrow will also give you what's called a freeze letter that typically title companies as well as escrow will require the seller to sign. A freeze letter is essentially saying, hey, I hereby freeze this line of credit. Not only am I paying it off at closing, I am also agreeing to not extract any money thereafter once it's paid. So those are the main things that I would say that you see commonly is the mortgages. A couple other items that you'll see specifically are tax liens.
Oh, yeah.
More specifically, you'll see IRS. So, for example, if your seller is not paying income tax to the federal government, they will issue a lien against your property. Those can be a pain to get. Typically, I would always advise agents as well as the sellers to say, hey, if you know you have an IRS lien, order a demand now. If you're the client themselves, because those can take 10 to 15 days. And especially if you're, looking at offers as an agent, talking to your client, that you have to take that in consideration with regards to timelines. Because if you have a prospective buyer that perhaps wants to close within 14 days, but this lien is on title and it takes 10 to 15, you're not going to be able to close. And typically title companies will not close a file delayed without that demand. And so typically you want to make sure that if you're going to order a demand as you, the client, or you're going to let your escrow agent know, order that right away. Usually common ways to order it, obviously via faxing. You can go on the IRS website, fax a request, or call them as well. I've even had clients go as far as finding a local IRS office. Specifically, there's one in National City. They'll drive there, make an appointment for if they can't see them same day, and get it in person.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And typically, I always tell clients, make sure that it's good through 30 days. Because obviously, of course, we want to make sure we have a threshold for interest and stuff like that that may accrue. So that's one component. For California income tax liens, so basically if you don't pay California, they'll put a lien on your property as well. Those are actually easier to obtain. So a lot of people don't know this. There is a website, California FTB website, there is a specific section that the escrow holder can make an account and also make a formalized request via their portal. You usually get it within 2 days.
Okay.
Before I was doing it old school, I was faxing it and hoping to God they received it. That would take probably 5 to 10.
Okay.
If you make an account on their portal as an escrow agent, as long as you have the client's social, the actual lien itself, you can upload everything and they can send you an email with the demand.
Okay.
But again, as an agent, ask your client, even also get a title report before you even, for example, go to your listing appointment. See what's on title. As a seller, if you know that information's pertinent and you don't see it on title, but you know you have a lien, bring it up.
Well, it's not going to be hidden.
Yeah, because the thing is with sellers is sometimes I've had sellers unfortunately try to be sneaky with information or withhold information where they knowingly know they have a lien, but they don't want to tell. It will be found out. One of the ways that it will be found out is because during the escrow transaction as a seller, you will fill out a form for title called a statement of information. And on that statement of information, you have to put your social. And so that social can be traced to any and all liens of record. Because typically when a company or a government entity files a lien against you, they always put your last four on the recorded document with the county. So when a title company goes searching, they'll put pen to paper and say, hey, I see these last 4 digits match your name, match your address. Oh, we didn't have it on title? Now we do. Similarly with another set of liens, child support. If it doesn't get found out originally, it will get found out one way or another through your social again when they run it. The title company. Those can be a pain. So I know we talked a little bit off camera, but regarding those, I've seen as many as 20 child support liens as well as one. But those can be an issue because oftentimes your seller, for example, might not even know they even existed. They might have thought, hey, I paid them incrementally, in my past relationship or whatever, and I thought it was taken care of. But unfortunately, like all government entities, left hand is not talking to the right hand. So though you may have paid your lien, for example, they never filed what's called a release, which is basically saying, hey, that person did pay us now. Let's release them of that lien. You'll have it literally probably 9 times out of 10. You as an agent reviewing a title report or your client talking to you, where the lien will be listed, but then when us as escrow go order it, it says, hey, there's zero balance. But we still need to know that though. So I will have it where I'll see maybe 5, 6 child support liens against the respective seller.
Crazy, right?
I will contact the county and say, hey, I want to make a formalized request for what's called a demand. And also what's separate from the other liens is you also have to request what's called a satisfaction of judgment. Usually they'll give you a demand if there has a balance to pay. And a second document called the satisfaction of judgment. That's basically saying, hey, once you've been paid in full and made whole, we would issue that satisfaction of judgment, which hereby releases that client of that respective lien. They usually mail it to us as escrow, and then we give it to the title company.
So with liens and all that, would it be best if the agent knew? We would more so want to do like a 30-day close then, really.
That, or what I would also say is, say for example, even right when you get the listing or prior,
Yeah.
I already have that PR. If you see that lien notated already on there, have your client order that demand.
Okay.
Because they can call the county as well, for
Okay.
the superior court for which that lien originates from. I've had liens that be in Riverside County, San Bernardino County. If they know the county in which it originates, have them call the child support services, request a demand, meaning if there's a balance to pay, they can have it on there.
Okay.
Secondary, ask them to request a satisfaction of judgment.
Okay.
If the county can mail it to them, perfect. That way, when we get into escrow, they can just give it to us as
Yeah.
escrow,
Get it paid
and
off.
we'll get it recorded.
I wonder
payoff.
how many people, because this has come up several times as me and an agent, but I wonder how many people like are never going to sell their house because they know they're so underwater with liens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah.
I've even more so even had it unfortunately happen when people are buying properties too. So, for example,
Okay.
a buyer as well, they have to fill out that same statement of
Sure.
information, because basically what title wants to ascertain is when you are coming on to title or acquiring a property, you're not bringing any baggage or liens with you.
God, I didn't even think of that.
I've had clients where
Okay.
they're getting a loan, for example.
Yeah.
And we have that form filled out, and then a child support comes up for that buyer. So they're buying a property, but they're going to have a lien come with them.
Oh.
We have to notify obviously their agents, all parties, as well as their lender. Because with child support now,
Oh, yeah.
you can get into the area. How does this affect their DTI?
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
You know, so it's like stuff like that. Where does that screw them over for getting a loan now? Can they even qualify? I've had tax liens come up on a buyer that the lender didn't catch when they were doing credit reports, stuff like that, all that jazz. Us as escrow have to give that bad news, and buyers will be like, "Well, I'm buying the property." Well, again, but for a title company willing to insure it,
Yeah,
do
sure.
they want to deal with that lien?
Sure.
Similarly, for a lender, if they're lending you money, do they want to deal with that too? Because then they realize, hey, this person's actually in a little bit more debt that we haven't
Yeah, sure.
known before.
And how long?
And it happens. It can kill a deal.
Yeah, for
unfortunately.
sure. If they owe.
Yeah.
Man, pay for your kids, people. Pay for your kids. Don't have them. No.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us on that. And we'll keep chatting with Rudy on more. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.